Have you ever observed a pattern repeating itself? Not just in nature, but in human relationships? A cycle that feels familiar, even predictable, yet remains incredibly destructive. Sometimes, the most challenging patterns are those hidden behind closed doors, in the intimate spaces we expect to be safe havens. Today, we're going to gently open that door and explore one of the most vital, yet often misunderstood concepts in understanding domestic violence, the cycle of violence. Domestic violence, often referred to as intimate partner violence, is a pervasive societal issue. It's far more than just physical harm. It's a systematic pattern of abusive behaviors, be they physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, or even technological, all designed to exert power and control over another person in a relationship. As a field, victimology helps us understand the dynamics of victimization, the relationship between victim and perpetrator, and how society responds. And at the heart of understanding why these complex situations persist is the groundbreaking work of psychologist Lenore E. who, in 1979, introduced us to the cycle of violence. This social cycle theory helps us make sense of the repetitive patterns in abusive relationships. It offers a framework for understanding that complex interplay of hope, fear, and manipulation that can make it so incredibly difficult for someone to leave or even to stay away from an abusive partner. It's not about making excuses for abuse, but about providing a lens through which we can better comprehend the lived experience of survivors, and in turn, offer more effective support. Let's dive into the 3, sometimes 4, distinct phases that typically characterize the cycle. Think of it like a journey, though one that no one should ever have to take. The journey often begins with what we call the tension-building phase. Imagine walking on eggshells constantly. This initial stage is marked by an escalating sense of unease. There's often increased irritability, criticism, angry gestures, or minor abusive incidents from the abuser, things like yelling or unreasonable demands. The victim often feels like they're trying desperately to appease their partner, to avoid conflict, to fix whatever is wrong. They might feel a growing anxiety, a sense of dread that something bad is coming. It's a simmering pot, building pressure beneath the lid. This phase can be incredibly emotionally draining, as the victim expends immense energy trying to manage the abuser's moods and prevent the inevitable explosion. Then, the pressure inevitably breaks. This leads us to the acute battering, incident, or explosion phase. This is the most perilous and usually the shortest stage. It's the eruption, a major outburst of physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological abuse. This is when injuries are most likely to occur, and the abuse is overt and undeniable. It can be terrifying, a sudden and overwhelming release of the tension that has been building. For the victim, this phase is often characterized by extreme fear, shock, and a profound sense of helplessness. It's a stark, brutal reminder of the abuser's control and the danger they pose. But here's where the cycle becomes truly insidious, creating a powerful trap. Following the incident, we often enter the reconciliation or honeymoon phase. Sometimes this is also referred to simply as a calm phase before the tension resumes. In this stage, the abuser typically expresses intense remorse. They apologize profusely, pledge to change, promise it will never happen again. They might lavish the victim with affection, gifts, and attention, recreating the illusion of a loving, caring relationship. For a time, things can feel wonderful, almost like they did at the very beginning of the relationship. This phase is designed to instill hope, to make the victim believe that the abuser truly is sorry, and that things will get better.
This honeymoon period is incredibly powerful. It's where the victim's hope is rekindled, where they might cling to the belief that the good person they fell in love with is still there, just hidden beneath layers of anger or stress. This hope, coupled with fear of further abuse if they try to leave, and the deep emotional bonds that have formed, creates a strong pull to stay. Over time, as the cycle repeats, a tragic progression often occurs. The frequency and severity of abusive incidents tend to increase. Crucially, the reconciliation or honeymoon phase often shortens, or in some cases, vanishes entirely. The calm becomes less frequent, and the tension building and acute battering phases become more rapid and intense. It's a spiral rather than a neat circle. It's also vital to remember that domestic violence extends far beyond physical harm. Victims frequently endure severe psychological consequences: depression, anxiety, fear, guilt, post-traumatic stress disorder, and profoundly diminished self-esteem. Tactics like gaslighting, which makes a victim question their own reality, intimidation, humiliation, and isolation, are all forms of emotional and psychological abuse that chip away at a person's sense of self. Abuse can be sexual, including reproductive coercion, financial, by withholding money or restricting access to funds. It can involve stalking or even digital abuse. To illustrate the breadth of these tactics, another foundational concept is the power and control wheel, developed by the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project, which shows the many ways abusers maintain dominance. This web of control is complex, and it's why understanding the cycle is so crucial. Now, while Lenore Walker's cycle of violence has been incredibly pivotal in raising awareness and providing a framework, it's also important to acknowledge that our understanding of domestic violence continues to evolve. The model, while immensely helpful, isn't universally applicable to every single abusive relationship, and it has faced some valid criticisms. For instance, Walker's original theory was based on a non-random sample, leading some to question its universal applicability to all relationships. Critics also argue that the cycle can sometimes oversimplify the truly complex and varied experiences within abusive relationships. Not every victim, for example, reports a clear honeymoon phase. Some experience chronic tension or abuse that feels entirely unpredictable. This doesn't invalidate their experience. It just means the model is a guide, not a rigid template. There's also a significant concern about the implication that certain phases might be safer for victims to leave. This is a dangerous misconception. Leaving an abuser can in fact escalate violence at any point. The most dangerous time for a victim is often when they are attempting to separate or have already left. Furthermore, the cycle has been criticized for sometimes neglecting broader social, economic, cultural, and systemic factors that influence domestic violence, such as poverty or lack of community support. Even the associated concept of battered woman syndrome, also pioneered by Walker, has been debated. While intended to explain a victim's psychological state, some argue it risked pathologizing victims rather than squarely placing accountability on the abuser or addressing the societal roots of violence. And in its early formulations, the cycle primarily focused on male perpetrators and female victims, leading to important discussions about its applicability to same-sex relationships or male victims, where the dynamics can be equally complex and damaging. Understanding the cycle of violence is not about blaming victims or offering a neat, tidy explanation for something so messy and painful. Instead, it's about recognizing the intricate web of manipulation, fear, and false hope that can keep individuals trapped. It underscores why simply telling someone to just leave is an oversimplification that fails to grasp the profound psychological and physical dangers involved.
The ongoing discussions and critiques surrounding the cycle of violence don't diminish its value. Rather, they underscore our evolving understanding of domestic violence. They highlight the critical need for comprehensive approaches, interventions that are tailored, flexible, and acknowledge the inherent complexity and variability of abusive relationships. Ultimately, our goal is to move beyond judgment and towards empathy, to provide support that empowers survivors, and to hold abusers accountable. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please remember that you are not alone, and help is available. Understanding this cycle is the first step towards breaking it, not just for individuals, but for our communities as a whole.